It was like something out of a cheap horror novel, only this time it was real.
Nobody, human being, can do this.
They wanted some answers, and what they found out shocked the world.
There was an overpowering stench.
We want to warn you, the details are disturbing.
Aldretti and her boyfriend are accused of killing 15 people in ritual human sacrifices.
All the sacrifices and all that, I mean, like, it was amazing.
She would cross that border to Mexico, and she would become somebody else. The police are scared of him. He was involved with so many politicians and state police and federal police. I'm sure the word was out. You find this guy, you kill him, because we don't want this guy to talk. I've worked 200 homicides, and you can never prepare for something like this. We were dealing with the unbelievable.
Today, I want to talk about a case that is really, truly one of the most messed up cases I've done in a while. Let me just start because it's a lot, but I'm going to give you a disclaimer. It's graphic, it's messed up, and obviously all my videos are messed up and graphic, but like, this one a little extra. So the whole thing starts in Miami in the 60s, okay, 1962 to be exact. There's a 15-year-old girl. She's a Cuban immigrant. Her name is Delia or Delia. When she is 15 years old, she has her first child, and his name is Adolfo. His full name is Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, but we're just going to call him Adolfo because that's his name. I'm already getting frustrated. Why? I don't know. You'll see why. I know, actually. Adolfo and his mom, Delia, they grew up in the neighborhood of Hialeah in Miami. Delia, she gets in a lot of trouble with the law. She gets arrested over 30 times for things like theft, vandalism, trespassing, and even child neglect. The child neglect case was because when police went to her home, they found that she was actually in this apartment with 27 animals, a bunch of kids, and there was blood, urine, and feces all over the floors. Now, the thing with Delia is that she practiced a religion known as Santeria, and then later on she would practice Palo Mayombe. Santeria and Palo Mayombe religions are a combination of Afro-Caribbean, like ancient folk religions that are then combined with Catholicism. There's rituals, a lot of like candles, certain spells being cast. Some people call it witchcraft. The people that don't like it say it's evil. And then there's people that are like, no, it's not evil. It's just like a religion, just like any other religion. In this particular case with Delia, she was known to practice it and very much heavy on the sacrifice part, like the animal sacrifices that she would do, which is why she had 20 something animals in her apartment. Additionally, her neighbors would say that if you got into a fight with her or even a disagreement or anything, she would end up leaving like a decapitated chicken on your front door or like a goat's head on your front door. And they would feel like she was like cursing them or hexing them with that. So that was basically Adolfo's childhood. Although Delia was arrested over 30 times, she never actually did prison time. She would always get probation and the charges would never stick. And this was believed by her to be because of these rituals and the religion she practiced. Like she felt that she was spiritually protected, and that's why she could do these things and not get in trouble for them. Adolfo's mom and dad, when he was born, they felt like he was like extremely powerful and that he was destined to be something special, like he was chosen. And when he was 6 months old, they had him blessed by a Haitian priest who practiced Palo Mayombe, and this would begin his journey to be taught in the ways of Palo Mayombe. Unfortunately, Adolfo's dad actually passed away when he was very young. After he passed away, his mom took him and they left Miami. They ended up going to Puerto Rico. When they went to Puerto Rico, his mom remarried, and the man she married, he was a Catholic. He wasn't into this Santeria, brujeria stuff. She converted to Catholicism for the husband, and she put Adolfo in church. He was an altar boy in the Catholic Church as a young kid, and they, pretended to be Catholic, but turns out secretly They were still practicing this religion, she and her son Adolfo. Delia actually sent Adolfo to Haiti when he was a young kid, and it was to teach him the secret teachings of Palo Mayombe with a priest over there. Now it's 1972 and the family moves back to Miami. The second husband also died. Okay, so two of Delia's husbands are now dead. The second husband, the Catholic, she gets an inheritance from him. And so she goes back to Miami with Adolfo and they have some money. And that's when she meets her third husband. Her third husband is a drug dealer and he is into Palo Mayombe. So she doesn't have to keep it a secret or anything. And he becomes Adolfo's stepfather and he actually encourages the teachings of Palo Mayombe, and he teaches him this sort of credence, this thing of like the non-believers who don't believe in Palo Mayombe, they are going to kill themselves through their foolishness by like taking the drugs and stuff. We don't take the drugs, we sell the drugs, and we let the non-believers basically kill themselves and kill each other. We profit from this quote unquote evil because they don't have like a moral judgment about it. All we care about is protecting ourselves and each other, and that's it. Adolfo's stepdad, just like his dad, also believes that Adolfo has these powers and he's very strong and he's psychic. Now it's 1970s Miami, and by the way, Adolfo is gay. He's a teenager and he's gay. So he's got this like double life going where he's in the gay scene in Miami as a teenager, partying, doing all this stuff. But then at the same time, he's doing this apprenticeship with a Haitian priest in Miami, and his mom is in on it too. And in the middle of the night, after he's gone out clubbing, he goes to graves with his mom and he robs the graves for bones, human bones, because his priest that he was learning from, he had something called the nganga. The nganga is basically a pot, a cauldron. Okay, it's a cauldron in which you put in the things, the offerings to the gods, the gods, orishas, spirits that you are worshiping as part of this religion, and they feed it with mfube, which is remains. Could be animal remains like chicken heads or turtle hearts, or you know what I mean, but it could also be human bones. The nganga, the cauldron, it's hungry. They have to feed it with stuff. It's like, ooh, it needs a young blood. So let's put a baby chicken and kill it and put it in there. Ooh, it needs something strong. Let's put the strong muscles of a strong animal. It's like that. And they just feed it, and it like gives them powers and protects them. Supposedly, I don't know how true this is, but supposedly he predicted the shooting of Ronald Reagan. He had the shooting in 1981. Yeah. Months before that, Adolfo said that someone was going to shoot Ronald Reagan and that Ronald Reagan was going to survive. And that happened. So they were like, oh my God, he's psychic. 2 years after this prediction, something big happens. Basically, he sells his soul to Satan, literally. Specifically, Kadiem Pembe, which Kadiem Pembe, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, is the Palo Mayombe like version of Satan. Okay, one of the spirits that's the Satan spirit, and he goes through this initiation ceremony. His padrino, the godfather, priest, high priest, warlock, whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm probably, no offense. He did this ritual scarring ceremony and there were symbols cut on his skin. And he's like, my soul is now dead and there is no God. I have no God. And he pledges himself to Kadiem Pembe. Now Adolfo worships evil. He uses evil to protect him and his family, and he uses evil for profit. And this is the way. So Adolfo and his mom, they're robbing graves, they're feeding the nganga, and all of a sudden now, by the way, Adolfo, he's good looking apparently. He starts to do modeling, which is when he decides to go to Mexico for a modeling gig. Now, this would end up being the beginning of when he starts his murderous killer cartel cult. While he's there, he would hang out in this area called Zona Rosa, which is kind of like, imagine like the red light district where it's like there's prostitutes and nightlife and all of this, and it's sort of the seedy part of town. And he goes there, and it's there that he is reading fortunes and making predictions and offering cleansings to the sort of underbelly of Mexico City. and he makes a name for himself there. They're like, this dude is powerful, like his readings, his predictions, his cleansings, they're all, they're all good according to the people there. So he starts to gain a bit of a following, including two guys who started out, supposedly he seduced them and they were his lovers, but then they would end up being his most loyal followers when he would start his cult. And that is Omar Ochoa and Martin Rodriguez. So after Adolfo meets them and gets this reputation, he ends up going back to Miami, but not for long. The year later, in 1984, he comes back to Mexico and he moves there for good. He moves into a place with Omar and Martin, and they kind of have this like throuple situation going on where they're like all three part of a couple, and he is becoming their padrino. They believe in his powers and everything, and that's basically the beginning of his cult. Together, they're going around, and Adolfo is giving not just readings and predictions and stuff, but he's offering these rituals. He becomes known as a spellcaster, and his spells are usually protection. So he first gets criminals like drug dealers, things like that, people who are doing things that want protection, that are not afraid of like the dark side of life. So when he tells them, like, I need the head of a goat and like the heart of a chicken and the blood of a, I don't know what, they're like, okay, fine. And they're giving him a good amount of money, all this stuff. He's making the sacrifices. They feel like they're being protected, and his reputation starts to spread from there. It gets to the point where he is not just for the criminals, but all the wealthy people, doctors, lawyers, police officers, politicians. We'll talk later. There's a whole scandal with that. But his clientele starts to become very wealthy people who want a protection for whatever reason. And his spells, they started involving more and more elaborate sacrifices. So it went from like a chicken and a goat to like a zebra, a baby lion cub, which cub and babies, that's what that means. He had this like book with all his spells and clients and stuff. And he's like, I need a boa constrictor for $1,000 for this spell. Zebra, like I said. Then he had the lion cubs that he sacrificed were like $3,000 for these spells. And so it's like turning into a thing. He's making tons of money. He's getting tons of clients and connections because these are powerful people that believe that he can protect them. And so in a few years, he is able to purchase a luxury condo in a luxury apartment building for $60,000 cash. Okay. And this is in the 80s, remember. Not only that, but he's got a fleet of cars, luxury cars, a Mercedes worth $80,000. Adolfo now is making connections with corrupt police officers as well, who have connections with members of cartels and things like that, and he's getting involved in that side of thing, and he's charging like a lot of money, and they're needing like next level protection. So this is when he decides to amp it up, because he was doing these exotic animal sacrifices and stuff to feed his nganga. Remember the cauldron? Well, remember when he was robbing graves with his mom in the 70s in Miami? Okay, he's like, I think I need to amp it up and start putting human remains in my nganga. So he and his cult members, robbing graves in Mexico to put human bones and remains in Nganga for these protection spells for the cartel members and the corrupt cops and all this stuff. It was one of these corrupt cops that ended up introducing Adolfo to a member of a cartel, a family cartel known as the Calzada family. So let me tell you, the officer here, his name is Salvador Garcia Alarcon, and he was the commander in charge of narcotics investigations. And then there was another federal judicial police officer known as Florentino Ventura Gutierrez, and he was from the Federales. And then they introduced him to the Calzada family in 1986, which at the time was one of the big narco families, like cartel families in Mexico. So he's introduced to the big guns, and he's making more money. Not only is Adolfo robbing graves and casting spells and making money, but no, he's getting involved in the drug dealing and the scamming too. What he's doing is he made a scam where he got $100,000, where he basically pretended to be a DEA officer and stole, busted, the drugs, but stole them from a drug dealer, like a bunch of cocaine. And then he used his contacts in the police, the crooked cops, he used them to sell that stolen coke to another drug dealer and made $100,000 like that. So he was just like all about making money and doing whatever it takes, and he didn't give a fuck. But as usual, you'll see this pattern with Adolfo. He needs to always amp it up. The nganga, the cauldron, it's hungry and it's like a bottomless pit of hunger. And the more he does, the more he wants to achieve, the more he needs to give this nganga. I just like saying that, the cauldron. He's like, these bones that we're stealing from the graves, they're old. They're too old. My nganga doesn't want old bones. My nganga wants fresh bones. So what does that mean? Fresh human bones. Murder. That's what it means. It's interesting if you look at the timeline that when he decides that it needs human sacrifice, fresh human sacrifice to feed, is also when he gets into a beef with the cartel family, the one I told you about, because he was doing these protection spells for them. They were really successful. They were making so much money. And he felt like, you're only this successful because of me and my spells. So he decided to tell them that he wanted to partner with them. He wanted in not just for them to pay him for rituals, but he wanted some of the drug money, the profits, the big money. And they were like, no. And he was like, my ganga's hungry and it wants your family. And that's what they do. They end up killing how many members? 6 or 7? Let me make sure. Of the Calzada family. 7. And this is when it gets really, 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 really messed up. You're like, even more, even more. The thing is, it's not just good enough to kill them. They have to be like tortured. Okay. It's really sadistic. The more fucked up they kill the people, like the more powerful the sacrifice is. Okay. So they're like mutilating them. They're doing all this messed up shit, torturing them, and like dismembering them. And it's just awful. Very, very awful. Once he does that, he's like on a high, right? Him and his cult members, they're like, oh my God, we're so powerful, everything. But at the same time, they're like, we just killed like our biggest client. So what are they going to do? They need to now, according to Adolfo, get in with another cartel, one that's going to play ball and partner with them, not these ones. So Adolfo decides to hatch a plan. And his plan was basically he was surveilling members of a particular cartel family called the Hernandez family. He wanted to get in there. There was already some infighting between them. This murder had happened where they killed each other. They were threats from the outside. Like they were already not in a good spot, but they had power in terms of what they controlled. And he wanted to swoop in at that moment. Adolfo finds out that one of the Hernandez family cartel's drug dealers is this guy called Gilberto Sosa. Gilberto has a girlfriend, and her name is Sarah, and Sarah Aldrete is going to be La Madrina, the godmother. But how? I'm going to tell you. Just listen. Adolfo sees that this is Gilberto's girlfriend, and he decides to stage this elaborate fake situation where he like almost gets into a car accident with her in his $80,000 Mercedes. He cuts her off like to where she almost hits him, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on? But then when he comes out of the car, he's like super friendly, super nice, when she would think that maybe he would not be. And they just kind of have this rapport. He's like, what's your birthday? What sign are you? And she tells him, and he's like, that's my mom's birthday too. And they're like, oh my God, whatever. So basically they hit it off and they decide that they're gonna like keep in touch. Meanwhile, the whole thing was orchestrated and planned, but Sarah had no idea. So then they end up meeting 2 weeks later, and that's when Gilberto, her boyfriend, is there when they meet. And Adolfo makes a point to like not shake his hand and kind of be like rude to him in a way when they're meeting. And then after that, Gilberto gets a random anonymous phone call where someone tells him that his girlfriend Sarah is like cheating on him and seeing another man. And she's like, no, I'm not. And he doesn't believe her and he breaks up with her. So when that happens, Sarah goes to Adolfo and she's like, oh my God, you're never going to believe it. Like, my boyfriend thinks I'm cheating on him and he's mad at me and this and that. When she tells Adolfo, Gilberto broke up with me and he thinks I'm like cheating on him, he's like, I saw this in the cards, in the tarot cards. And she's like, you did? He's like, yeah, let me read your cards. And that's how she gets sucked into like the whole spiritual thing that he does. She gets really, really into it. And he's like, don't worry, come here, whatever. And they end up sleeping together. Then after that, he tells her, actually, by the way, I'm gay. But he's also at this point talking to her about all this spiritual stuff and whatever. And she was like, okay, that's fine. Like, but I still want to be your follower. Like, she was still interested in the spiritual aspect. Now, keep in mind, Sarah, she has like this double life because where they're at right now in Mexico, it's this town called Matamoros. It's a border town. It's right on the border with Texas. And there's another border town that is on the other side of the Mexican border in Texas called Brownsville, Texas. So, like, Brownsville and Matamoros, even though they're on like different sides of the border in different countries, they're almost like the same town because they're so connected. Like, people go to school in Brownsville and go back home to Matamoros and stuff like that. And Sarah was one of those people. She was going to school, high school in Brownsville, Texas, and then coming home to live with her parents in Matamoros, where her dad worked. And then over time, she became like a resident alien. She like applied for the status. She was really good in school. They say she was smart and she played sports and everything. Her teachers wanted her to go to college. Instead, she gets married to this guy like 11 years older than her. And she lives in Brownsville. He's from Brownsville. Then, like 5 months later, they separate. It's not good. And so she is now deciding to go to college in Brownsville, and she is still driving back to Matamoros to live with her parents because she got separated. And that's when she met the Gilberto guy, who's this drug dealer in Matamoros. So that's like her little backstory. So now that she's broken up with Gilberto and hanging out with Adolfo in Matamoros, she's all different. When she's going to college, they're like, she's dressing different. She's talking about spirituality. Like, she totally changed. She went from being this like jock to being like super like spiritual. She even had this necklace that they say was like dipped in blood. And that when her friend tried to touch it, she like smacked his hand.
I noticed that she had a necklace, string necklace. It got my attention, and I was about to touch it. I still remember. She just slapped hard. It hurt me, right? Ah, man, it hurt. And she stood back, and she got serious. I said, don't touch it. This necklace has just been blessed. If you touch it, all the harm that is coming toward me is going to bounce back to you. And I said, oh, okay. I thought it was weird. And I said, so why? He said, brown. He said, oh, this is blood. I can tell it was fresh.
Sarah's spending a lot of time with Adolfo and his cult, and he starts calling her La Madrina, which is the godmother. And he's like initiating her into the cult, and he is using her kind of like a honeypot to attract and lure men, either for sacrifices or to join the cult, depending. And part of this luring men into the cult would be this movie called The Believers that came out in 1987.
Don't you come any closer!
A religion as old as time.
They got my shield. Don't you get it?
They know who you are. Chris was chosen, Carol. When he found the shell, it was a sign. The Believers.
Which is eerily similar to what they would end up doing. And it's like, which came first, the cult or the movie? Did the movie inspire the cult? Or was that stuff going on? And then, I don't know. Sarah's all in now. She's doing sacrifices. Like, she didn't kill the humans, but she would do the animal sacrifices in her apartment. Like, they found blood spattered all over the walls in her apartment. Also, infant clothes. Like, so I don't know what that's about. Like, baby clothes everywhere. She didn't have baby. Now that Sarah's all in, remember, this is all an elaborate plan for Adolfo to get in with the Hernandez cartel. So she's full in now, and Adolfo tells her he had a vision that someone from the Hernandez family is going to contact her with a problem. And lo and behold, it happens. When that happens, Adolfo basically wants a meeting with them. And that's when he finally meets Elio Hernandez, who is one of the members of the Hernandez cartel cult. Not cult, cartel. Well, they will become part of a cult, but at the time it's cartel family. I'm getting confused. Cartel cults killing cuckoo caca. I don't know. He convinces the Hernandez family to let him protect them, but also to go in on the business with them, to become a partner, and that he's going to help them and all this. And they agree. So now they move the cult from Matamoros to a ranch, which is about like 20 miles out, and it is owned by Elio Hernandez. It's their ranch, and it is in this ranch that some of the most fucked up shit happens. They have this like initiation ceremony where they get these Hernandez brothers initiated into the cult, and there's like they believe, and now they're protected, and he's telling them shit like bullets can't hurt you. When you go in front of the police, you become invisible. Like nobody can touch you. And they're like, they feel they're invincible. Additionally, once they do all this shit with Adolfo and the sacrifices they're doing, because that's what they're doing. They're like picking off rival gang members and sacrificing them, putting them in the nganga at the ranch, right? They're like killing people and cooking them in this pot, and they're doing well. They're moving tons and tons of marijuana. They're not getting caught. They're making more money than before. So they're believing, they're like, oh my God, we made a deal with the devil and it is paying off. Ooh, I love it. That's what's happening. It is now 1988. And remember how I told you Adolfo's Nganga, the cauldron, it's hungrier and hungrier and wants more and more. So they're like constantly kicking things up a notch. Adolfo is wanting more and more sacrifices, and he's wanting them to be more and more messed up. The torture is increasing. He is like violating they're all men, by the way, that they sacrifice. They're men. And some of them are young. So they're like, the Nganga needs youth. Then they kill like a boy. But then the boy was crying when they were trying to cut his head off. And Adolfo's like, he's crying too much. It's gonna make the Nganga sad. So like, let's throw him away. We need another one. He needs to be screaming, but we don't want him crying. So messed up. Starts to get weird. Like his lovers that he has that are part of his cult, he's like, he kills one of their exes. I don't know why, but it seemed personal. They're getting like brazen because they've gotten away with so much. They killed 7 members of this cartel family. Nothing happened. They're in with another cartel. They're killing people left and right. They're not getting caught. They feel protected. Remember, their bullets can't kill them. Police can't see them. So when they kill the ex-lover of Adolfo's current lover, Jorge, one of the original 3 that he was involved with, they just leave the body out in the street. Like they kill him not for a sacrifice, so they just like left him there. They didn't take the body. So these little kids found this dead body in daylight in the middle of the street, and they're like running and screaming, going to police. And the area is like getting terrorized too. Like people are hearing about them, but they're afraid. They don't know who it is. It's just bad. Although the community is living in fear, they don't know. Either they know and they're not saying, or they don't know. You decide. But in any case, they're not getting caught. Something then bad happened to the Hernandez family that was supposed to be protected by Adolfo. What is that? One of the Hernandez brothers and his 2 infant sons, they get kidnapped. And so Adolfo goes and kidnaps 2 other people and horrifically tortures and mutilates them with his cult members while they're screaming and chanting prayers, asking for the safe return of the Hernandez guy and his kids. And guess what? They do end up returned safely. And even more than that, there's no ransom that they had to pay. So usually they'll like kidnap for a ransom. So they got them back. They were safe. There's no ransom. And it was after Adolfo did this horrible sacrifice and ritual. So of course, he and everyone else, they think what? That their ritual worked, their magic worked. After this whole incident, right, word started to spread about Adolfo and his powers. Then a month after this whole thing with the kidnapping was happened and they were released, remember one of the police officers I told you about, Ventura, the one who introduced him to the Calzada cartel? He ended up taking his own life as well as his friend and his wife's life first. And they all say that like Adolfo didn't even care. He wasn't phased by it. He barely even acknowledged that it happened. And they just kept doing what they were doing. So there were some people, I guess, who were like, this has gone too far, but the rest were like all in all the way. Adolfo also made sure that like his cult followers feared him and were loyal to him. One of his fears was that they were going to rat him out or something. So he had one of his rules, which comes from his stepfather, was that even though they sell drugs, they don't use them. Let the non believers kill themselves and use the drugs with their foolishness. Remember, that's what his stepfather said when he was young, who's also in Palo Mayombe and a drug dealer. So now you've got Adolfo, who's in his 20s, supervising major shipments of these drugs and doing Palo Mayombe as El Padrino, godfather, and those rules were really major. We don't use drugs, and his followers were not allowed to use drugs. But then he found out that one of his followers was using drugs. And so he had the cult members and him torture and kill him and let everyone know, you disobey me, this is what happens to you. Now it's 1989. This is the beginning of the end, when it all goes to shit. 1989, Adolfo is continuing with his sacrifices and he predicts a lot of things, right? But he didn't really see his end coming. Interesting. He was doing sacrifices and it was starting to get crazy and sloppy. So like there was one instance where they sacrificed a wrong person and it ended up being a cousin of one of their followers and they were like, oh shit, we messed up and we have to go get another one. Then also when he would kill people for a sacrifice, remember he had to torture them, they had to die screaming. And there was one situation where they captured someone to do a ritual with, but that person escaped and was running away, and so they ended up having to shoot him instead of torturing him. And so they were like, what a waste. We can't use him as a sacrifice. And then went to go find someone else. So it was getting kind of crazy. At this point, there is a really big shipment, like 800 kilos of weed that is about to be smuggled into the United States and by the Hernandez brothers, and Adolfo's overseeing it. And so he felt like, I need to make like a really good sacrifice to make sure that this shipment makes it safely. So he decides, because this was spring 1989, by the way, there's such a thing as spring break that happens where a lot of American students who live by the border come to Mexico for spring break. And this was going to be spring break season. And so Adolfo's like, mein ganga, it needs a brain. Like we're making all these mistakes. Like it needs a brain. I need a medical student's brain. I want an American student's brain from these spring breakers. Like find a medical student and give me his brain. They're like, okay. So he sets the date for the sacrifice, March 13th, 1989. We're going to make this sacrifice so that we can send this shipment and it'll get there safely. This is when Mark Kilroy comes into the picture. Mark Kilroy was a 21-year-old pre-med student from Texas who was on spring break with his friends in Matamoros, and he would end up getting kidnapped by Adolfo's cult members. So this is what happened. He and his friends were basically crossing the border every day to party in Matamoros because like the drinking age in Matamoros is like 16 and they're super lax. It's like very party. But the hotel they were staying in was right on the border in the States. And so what they would do is there was this bridge that you could just walk, and it was literally like a couple blocks. And in like 15 minutes or something, you could go from the States to Mexico and back really easily. So what these guys would do is they would park their car at the edge of the border in the States, cross over to Matamoros, party, and then walk back across the bridge to the States, get in their car, go back to the hotel. So they've been doing that for a couple nights. Now this is the night that Adolfo ordered that they need to get this brain from a medical student. And so they're partying, they're club hopping. So there are four guys together, including Mark, and they decide, okay, we're done. We're going to now walk to the bridge, like cross the bridge to get to the car in the States. So two of the guys are walking ahead, and Mark and this other guy, Bill, are behind. So as they're walking, Bill needs to pee, right? So he dips into this alleyway to pee, and he sees Mark there, and there was like a guy that seemed to be approaching him or talking to him, but he couldn't really remember exactly what happened. And he goes to pee, and then when he comes out, Mark is nowhere to be found. So he looks for Mark. He can't find Mark. He catches up to the other two and he tells them. They start looking for Mark for hours and hours, like well after all the bars closed, the streets were empty. They can't find Mark. And then they decide, you know what? Maybe he crossed the border on his own and he's like waiting for us by the car. So they decide to cross the border. They go to the car. He's not there. They're like waiting a little bit. They're like, you know what? Maybe he got a ride to the hotel. Like, let's go to the hotel. Maybe he's there. They go, he's not there. Now, we're keeping in mind, they're drunk. It's late at night. They end up passing out. They wake up the next morning, still no sign of Mark. That's when they go to police and they file a police report. At first, the cops are like, okay, you know how many missing reports we get from spring breakers who end up showing up hours, maybe even a day or two later, being like, ooh, I don't know what happened, a crazy night. And so they didn't really take it seriously. But then as time went on, they were like, oh, wait, this is like a big deal. And they started to think there's foul play involved. Like, was he kidnapped for a ransom? Because that was a thing that was very likely to have happened. But the thing was, usually they kidnap someone for a ransom, they ask for a ransom, but there was no ransom being asked. And Mark's parents came down, they were offering reward. Like the story was now starting to get attention. Keep in mind, Mark, he has connections. His uncle is a U.S. Customs Border Patrol. He's like high up in there. His family know politicians and people in there. So when news broke that he was like officially missing in Mexico, all that political power that he was connected to in the States started putting pressure on Mexico. Additionally, because this was becoming a big story, it was on America's Most Wanted and everything like that, the tourism industry in Mexico also was putting pressure on the police to figure out what happened and solve it, because they don't want this like bad reputation where people are like, we're not going to go to spring break in Mexico because you could get kidnapped, you know? So it starts to become this huge investigation. What they don't know is that what happened is this. When Bill went to go pee in the alleyway, Mark was approached by a guy. He was a thin guy with a scar on his face, and he said something to Mark like, don't I know you from somewhere? Or we've met before, something like that, to like lure Mark to come closer to him in the truck. When Mark gets closer to them in the truck and it's these cult members, they end up like grabbing him to kidnap him, put him in the truck. But he actually struggles with them and then breaks free and starts running for a few blocks. When there was another car that was also part of the cult people, it cut Mark off, and they all get out and they jump on him and they actually grab him and they put him in the truck. Then they take him to the ranch. When they take him to the ranch, they handcuff him, blindfold him, and they keep him in the back of the truck. While he's there the whole night till the next morning, there's a caretaker at dawn who's not part of the cult. He's just a caretaker at the ranch. He sees this guy, and so he gave him food and water, but like didn't release him, but like took mercy on him and tried to help him. Well, once it was afternoon, morning time, Adolfo comes with the cult members and they begin the awful, horrendous sacrifice ritual, which involves they take Mark to the shed and they do to him what Adolfo does to everyone, which is sodomize, SA for hours, torture, mutilate, cut things up, just messed up shit. Do that for ages. And then when it's time for the sacrifice, only Adolfo and one other guy who has the ritual initiation, like tattoos of being an assassin for the cult, can do the killing. Like, not anybody can kill in the sacrifice. So it was Adolfo with a machete who hit Mark in the back of the head to kill him. And then they like took his brains, put it in the ganga, and boiled it. And then they did this messed up shit with the spine and the necklace and stuff.
Ran a wire through the back, through his spinal cord, all the way and come out. So later on, we just can come and get it out, and he can make a necklace.
What you need to know is that that happened while Mark's friends are looking for him, and then the next morning, and they're filing a report. They're all trying to find him. Meanwhile, he's been tortured and killed by like the 15th, and he was taken in the wee hours of the 14th, the night of the 13th. Okay. The US authorities and the Mexican authorities, they're working together on this investigation. And the US authorities start saying, like, a lot of the police that we're working with, they're cooperating and stuff, but like the local ones in the area, they're not cooperating, and we feel like they're like protecting someone. There's something weird there now. And remember, right, Adolfo had connections in there, and some of his clients and loyal customers and even followers of his cult were in the police force. So that's not surprising. So they're just like having a roadblock trying to find out what happened. All this attention on the case and media and investigation, all this stuff, it shocked Adolfo. Another thing he didn't predict. Maybe he's not good at predicting. He didn't think that it was going to create such an uproar. And so now he's thinking, shit, I sacrificed this guy for his brain, for my nyanga, for my package, this huge shipment of 800 kilos of marijuana. But he's now thinking, it's too much going on. I need to make another sacrifice to ensure the safety of this shipment. And that is when they decide to sacrifice Gilberto Sosa. Remember him? He was Sarah's boyfriend when he created that whole scheme to get in and the fake accident, the whole thing. Remember? They end up getting Gilberto lured by Sarah, who knew it was going to happen.
Did she know what was going to be done to him? I'm pretty sure she was.
And they kill him.
How many people did you kill after
Mark?
after Mark?
I think it was two. I think it was two, but they cut one of his fingers. Like they took one of his testicles. They twisted his neck.
And then on April 1st, one of the Hernandez family members, his name is Serafin, he's driving this truck and he's going back to their ranch, and there is a police checkpoint. Now remember, what did Adolfo tell them? That you are bulletproof and invisible to police. So he really thinks he's invisible to police. So when he drives to the checkpoint, he just blows through it because he thinks they can't see him. Okay? So the police, when they see that, it raises a red flag, and instead of them like putting on their sirens and following him, they decide to get in an unmarked car and follow Serafin without him noticing. That's when they end up at the ranch where all the crazy shit happened. So they're still in the back, they're watching, and they see Serafin go in, and he's in for like 30 minutes or something, and then he gets back in the truck and he leaves the ranch. When Serafin Hernandez leaves the ranch, police go in and start looking through the ranch. That's when they see a shit ton of marijuana. Remember, this is the shipment that Adolfo did the sacrifice for to protect. It still hasn't been shipped out. And they also see like candles and bottles of alcohol and like shrines and altars and things like that. So they see all that and they make note of it, but they don't do anything. And they're like, okay, we're going to continue to surveil them, sorry. They still don't know that this is connected to Mark or anything. They're just like, we've caught some illegal drug activity. Let's keep watching. They just think they're about to bust like the Hernandez cartel, and that's it. Well, a week later, they do decide to bust. Why? Because on April 8th is when the shipment finally goes out and it is safely delivered. And Adolfo's like, "Ooh, thank God I killed those two people for the shipment. It was worth it." Well, the next day after that, cops raid the ranch. Now, Adolfo is not there. He usually stays at a hotel somewhere else. But there are people, part of the cult and the family, including the caretaker who fed Mark, who are there. They get arrested. When they're questioned, okay, about what's going on, the caretaker sees a photograph of Mark. And the caretaker says, I know this guy. They're like, how do you know him? He's like, I fed him. He was here at the ranch and he was blindfolded and stuff. I gave him food and water. So they're like, oh. They go to Serafin Hernandez. They're like, do you know this guy? He's like, yeah, I know him. They're like, where is he? He's like, oh, yeah, no, we kidnapped him and we killed him to sacrifice him. And they're like, okay. Serafin was very nonchalant about the whole thing. He's not making the connection that the cops saw him, I guess, when he blew through the sign, he still believes in Adolfo's powers, that he's invincible and this and that. So even though he's arrested and they're asking questions, he is just telling them everything because he's like, I'm untouchable. So he's like, yeah, we sacrificed him, we killed him, we practiced this. Like, Adolfo's the one who did it. I kidnapped him. Like, this is what we do. They're like, where is he? He's like, oh, he's buried on the ranch. So the cops are like, let's go to the ranch then. They take him to the ranch and they're having him like dig up the body. And he's like, which body do you want me to dig up? They're like, what do you mean, which body? He's like, we have a lot of bodies. Which one? And they're like, a lot of bodies. Anyway, this is when they find out that there was like 15 dead bodies buried in the ranch, and they're having Seraphine dig them up, and all the cult members that they arrested are there, and they're asking them questions, and they're starting to make the connection that not only was it just like they killed Mark, but that this is like a cartel cult that sacrifices humans to protect their drug shipments, and that there's like 15 or at least dead people here, some of which are kids. Like, there was like 14-year-old, 15-year-old, like minors. So while they're at this property and they're digging up the bodies and stuff, like, the situation is really tense between the cult members and the police, because the cult members are very nonchalant. There's this moment where Seraphine is digging, he's gagging and digging, but he's trying to play it off like he doesn't care. And he says to the officers, don't you guys want to order some food? Like, I'm hungry. Like, don't you want to get some food? Like, as if he's not digging up like corpses. And so the comandante, who was like the, I guess, commander or something, like the officer there, was pissed about this. Because remember, they're telling them that your bullets can't hurt us and we're invincible, and El Padrino's gonna come at any moment right now and blah, blah, blah. He has apparently an Uzi, the Comandante. Out of frustration, when Seraphine says, let's order some food, I'm hungry, he grabs this Uzi and starts just like firing it in the air. Seraphine went from nonchalant to chalant. He became chalant, and he was like, I don't really know anything about this. Like, I don't know, I'm not involved. Like, all of a sudden, backtracking, okay? Backtracking. They end up digging up these bodies, and it took a long time. They had to bring a tractor, and it went on for days. And like I said, they end up finding 15. While all this is happening, okay, Adolfo, Sarah, Martin, the lover of Adolfo, Omar, the other lover, and a third guy who is called El Dubi. These 5 are on the run. What happened was, after that shipment on the 8th, they weren't at the ranch, right? They were at this hotel. Well, when the cops raided the ranch the next day and they all got arrested, word got back to Adolfo and those like top ranking members, and they basically were in hiding. So they're keeping tabs on what's going on, and they're in hiding. So when this story broke of the bodies being found at the ranch and stuff, they're like, oh shit, like, it's over. We really gotta not just hide, we have to flee. So they end up flying to Texas, and then from Texas, they fly back to Mexico City. And everyone thought, the police and stuff, once they started getting the name of like who is Adolfo and where is he from and everything, they thought he was going to go back to Miami to go stay with his mom or his connections in Miami. Instead, he went to Mexico City right under their noses. When the story broke of what was going on, it was insane. They're all mutilated. The descriptions of the things that were cut off and scar markings, like, it is insanely, insanely graphic. And then they're like, we find this nganga, this cauldron, and there's like footage of the cauldron, and you could see like skull in there. They're like, we found brain in there, we found turtle hearts and fucking goat heads and chicken assholes, like all kinds of shit. Had blood and hair and gold coins and sticks, like these like sticks. There's a ritual with the sticks. They would cook the sticks and use it to communicate with the dead. And so it was sensational. They're like, oh, he pledged himself to Satan, and this is a satanic cult that's doing human sacrifices, and the cartels, like in the 80s. There was already the satanic panic. So this was like, oh my God, everyone was freaking out. After those bodies were dug up, the police take those cult members that they had captured and they parade them in front of like over 100 reporters. And there's sort of this like press conference that's going on. And they're basically saying, you know, we're part of this cult. This is what we believe. He's our leader. We didn't kill anyone. He does all the killings, but like, this is what we believe. And so they have a field day with that. Mark's parents, they end up going back home and they're like devastated, but at least they know where their son is now and they're starting to make preparations for that.
It was very good that he was captured and the whole group was captured because that group was a group that just killed people.
Now it's April 17 and the cops are still looking for Adolfo and his crew. As they're going to his apartments, they find one apartment that is his, and they go in there and they find a bunch of gay porn. They didn't know he was gay at the time. That was cult members. Nobody said anything. Once they find out that he's gay, they go to the gay scene in the area and they start asking questions. A day after they raid his stuff and ask questions, Adolfo does a tarot card reading and it says that he's going to be betrayed. That's what the cards tell him. So now he gets super paranoid. He has an Uzi that he's like sleeping with and he's keeping it next to him. He's barely sleeping, like minutes at a time. He's like looking at everyone suspiciously in the house and stuff. He's trying to scare the remaining followers. He's like, you know, the police can't kill you, but I can kill you. So that was on April 18th. On April 22nd, something happened that would send Adolfo into a rage. So the Mexican police, they brought someone in called a curandero, I think, right? A curandero, who's like, it says that's like a folk healer. They do spiritual stuff. And they brought this guy in, number one, to cleanse and protect them from all this satanic demon stuff they were afraid of. But also they wanted someone who understood how Adolfo thought, like that world, and could give them advice on how to find them. So this curandero, he decides to tell the police, if you want to get under his skin, you want to rattle him and make him do something irrational, maybe catch him, you're going to burn down the shed with his altar, the ritual, and then ganga, burn then ganga. It's going to drive him crazy. So the Mexican police, they call the media. They make a whole thing about it because they wanted Adolfo to see. They burned down his altar and the shed where he did all his rituals at the ranch, and they burned then ganga. And Adolfo would say that he felt when he saw this that he was R-worded.
Constanza saw the burning of the temple of the hut. He felt that we had invaded his privacy, that we had done something we shouldn't have.
Which is funny because that's what he did to all the people that he sacrificed. But your cauldron got burned and you're going to compare it to that? Anyway, Adolfo went crazy. He starts flipping tables and furniture. He's like, prostitution whore, you've been arrested 19 times.
Prostitution whore, you are f***ing Dave 19 times.
He's lost it. So now he's like, okay, we got to move again. Like, they're here, they're watching, they're burning, they're in my head. This is when they move to another one of his apartments. Now it's May 2nd. They've been on the run for weeks now. And Sarah is starting to like freak out and she feels like she's in danger or something. She's just feels like Adolfo's might do something to her. So she writes this note and throws it out of the bedroom window of the apartment that she's hiding in with Adolfo and the rest of them. And the note reads, please call the judicial police and tell them that in this building are those that they are seeking. Tell them that a woman is being held hostage. I beg for this because what I want most is to talk or they're going to kill the girl. There's a guy walking on the street who finds the note and thinks it's a joke and ignores it and keeps going and nothing happens. 4 days later, though, is when all the shit goes down. May 6th. Police have been investigating, asking questions, and they've found this guy at a grocery store who was buying a lot of groceries with US dollars, which in that little area was unique. It was different. So they're like, start following him, and they figure out that this guy is El Dubi, one of the cult members, and that he was buying these groceries for Adolfo. I forgot his name. Sorry. Now, the crazy shit is what ends up happening is they go to the apartment that they're in, but not for raiding where Adolfo is. Like, they still haven't picked that up and figured that out. So when cops are outside of the apartment building, Adolfo, who's paranoid out of his mind, he's already looking out the window all the time. So he sees cops outside and he's like, shit, they're here. And he fires first from the apartment window. He starts shooting at the cops. So the cops start shooting back, and there's a shootout that happens. They're asking for backup. There's like 180 cops. The shootout is going on for 45 minutes, where Adolfo and his people are shooting out of the apartment down at the cops who are shooting back. While this shootout is going on, Adolfo is going crazy. He's basically like, we're all gonna die. Everything is over. Like, they're not gonna let them have my money. So he's throwing cash out of the window, gold coins. He's taking tons and tons of cash and just burning it on the stove, being like, hey, if they're taking me down, they're not going to take anything from me. And he's basically telling them, like, let's all die, let's all die. Well, Sarah's like, she doesn't want to die. His loyal follower Martin is down to die with him, but El Dubi is not so much. It's getting to the point now where they're running out of ammunition. They're shooting back like less and less. The cops are realizing they're out of ammo, so the cops start going into the building. They're realizing, shit, like, we're fucked. So that is when Adolfo tells El Dubi to kill him, like, shoot me, kill me. You kill me, I'm not gonna want the cops to kill me. And he tells him to also kill his favorite lover, Martine. Him and Martine, like, kill us both, like some sort of suicide pact situation. Well, El Dubi's like, doesn't want to do it. He's scared. Adolfo smacks El Dubi across the face and tells him, you're going to go to hell and suffer forever there if you do not kill me. And don't worry, I'm coming back. El Dubi says he shot Adolfo and Martine, who were hugging each other, bracing for the shot. According to the autopsy, though, what's weird is that one of the shots went through Adolfo's eyes, but not through his eyelids. So his eyes were open when he was getting killed, which is kind of crazy. After El Dubi shoots Adolfo and Martine, Sarah runs out of the apartment down towards the cops who are coming up, and she's screaming, he's dead, he's dead, they killed him, he's dead. She throws herself at the cops and she is like, oh, they held me hostage, I was a hostage, like, thank you for coming. Like she had nothing to do with it. She was like a victim too. The cops come into the apartment and they find all the destruction everywhere. They arrest El Dubi and Sarah. And then there's this other like press conference they do where police again are parading them in front of the reporters.
De Leon, who had obviously been beaten, claims he shot Constanzo after the cult leader begged to be killed. Lawman called her the witch, and this afternoon in Mexico City, Sarah Aldrete proclaimed her innocence.
All the sacrifices and all that. I mean, like, it was like, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing.
Sarah, she was like, I had no idea they were killing people. I didn't know, like, I believed and I followed, but I didn't know that he was doing all this other culty stuff and they killed people. I just thought, I was into like his tarot card readings. Like, I didn't know. Well, later on, when they interrogate them, they find out that's not true. Like, she knew a lot more. Everyone else said it. There was evidence, like, even she herself would tell on herself when she would try to, like, rebuttal the accusations from the cops. She would say stuff that revealed that she was way more involved than she initially claimed. And everyone was like, dude, she's like La Madrina. She's not just a cult member, like she's up there. They all end up getting arrested and charged. Omar Orea was also there with Martine and Adolfo and El Dubi and Sarah. He also got arrested. Now, before he could get sentenced, he actually died from AIDS. He had AIDS, and so he died before he could get sentenced. But the rest of the people, they also arrested so many more cult members and all this stuff. But all of them got different levels of charges, but the main ones that I was telling you about that got caught at the end, they all got in the end with like appeals and blah and all this, 50 years. And some of them can go for appeal like 25 years. And so that seemed like it was it, and the case was closed, except it wasn't, because Sarah came out in early 2000. She wrote this autobiography and she was making these crazy accusations. She was like, this was a setup. I'm innocent. The police tortured me. They lied. And they're covering up all the powerful people that were really involved in this cult. And that's why they like tortured us, made us confess, put us in jail, and they're the ones that actually killed Adolfo. It wasn't this like suicide thing. They killed him because they didn't want the truth coming out. Because what came out at the time, even the attorney general, when he made the statement, he said that like these followers, they all said that they were very high profile people, politicians, celebrities, whatever, a lot of police, people who were involved in this cult. And that nobody wanted Adolfo talking and saying who was there because it was like they were all going to get exposed. And when the police were even asked to name these people, they were like, no, these are, we can't, they're crazy accusations that these crazy cult members are making. Like, we're not going to give it any weight. Like, we're not even going to tell you because they're probably lying. So it did make people think, like, who are you guys protecting?
He was involved with so many politicians and state police and federal police and different people that we found in this book. I'm sure the word was out. You find this guy, you kill him, because we don't want this guy to talk.
But at the same time, it's not like because they're protecting those people that these members were not involved, which what they claim. Because even Sarah Finn came out and said the same thing after Sarah. He was like, yeah, I was tortured. I was made to confess. I didn't really do it, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. You guys believe what you want. But basically, that is the story of the whole thing. I would like to know what you guys think. Like, were they fall guys to cover something up or were they involved? Me personally, I think that it was like they were involved and also they're covering up for people. Like, both things are true. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.